Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. He's Pratt Rogers, back for one more visit with us. He's going to take a little break after this, but we have a lot to get to. But before we get started, hey, have you gone to the Grove Collective /March to Victory? Or grovecollective.com/march to victory. It's a bracket style tournament where you can go in there, and it's basically whichever region you're in, they're competing with other regions around the country in a bracket style competition to see who can donate the most money to the Grove Collective. Check them out on the website, thegrovecollective.com/march to victory. Pratt, man, it's good to have you back, bud.
Thanks, man. By the way, you talked about the Grove bracket. I would not want to be the guy coming up with the regionals. Did you look at kind of the geographic region for the bracket?
It's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Yeah, it's Florida is Florida. Now that's pretty good. I'm like, all right, so I'm good to go. But then you look and there's like 3 in Mississippi. There's 2 in Texas.
Yeah.
And there's no real rhyme or reason. Like the Midwest is all one. The West is all one.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And I totally get it's not fair to like divide it by state because Mississippi would obviously
better win. Yeah.
Yeah, should win or have a puncher's chance at least. But I thought that was hilarious. It was basically West Coast, East Coast, North Mississippi, Central Mississippi, South Mississippi. Anyway, I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah. And I think it would be honestly, if we're going to be real about it, Georgia should probably win, right? Because that's where the Jordans are. That's where the real tree people are.
I didn't think about it like that. Maybe they need to be an asterisk or an outlier.
Well, they've got like a donation match up to like $500,000 apparently, to where
who does?
The Jordans, the real tree, they're matching all the donations up to like $500,000.
Whoa, I did not know that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, those guys are big time. Those are big time. For people that don't understand it, the way that Realtree's thought of now is probably the same way that like Dickie Scruggs was thought of back in the 90s.
Look, I'm a big outdoorsman. I do not want. I won't say ever, but it would be hard pressed to buy anything other than Realtree for me from here on out. I really appreciate what they've done. They've just been such a champion for the Grove Collective and everything. Yeah, you won't catch me dead in Mossy Oak. I'll tell you that though.
Yeah. It is kind of funny that Mississippi State and Ole Miss has freaking camo wars.
I know. Is that not the most Mississippi backwoods thing of all time? Hey, it's home for me though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, hey, anybody, you guys want to hear a stereotype? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Caleb Cunningham got crystal balled to Ole Miss by David Johnson, by the way, Pratt.
So I have not seen the confidence level. I know you and I were talking a little bit pre-recording. Big deal. Maybe a little premature in my mind, though.
Everything's premature. It's March.
Well, all the smoke is Mississippi State. It's just state on everything, and
I don't even buy that, man. I don't
really.
Yeah, because this time last year was we were all Damon Williams. He was going to be the future quarterback of Ole Miss. The year before that, we were all Marcel Reed. He was going to be the guy coming in. It's March. I mean, we haven't even had camp. We haven't even had camp season yet.
Fair.
And all he's going to go. And honestly, this is nothing against the kid. I think the kid should go to all the places that he wants to go. He's got a visit to Miami. Good. Fantastic. I think all recruits should visit Miami because Miami's awesome. I think all recruits should go to Arizona State because Arizona State is awesome. And just go visit and have some experiences. And he's going to go visit 10 schools before summer. And he's probably going to get a major bump after each one. And he got a major bump after the Ole Miss one because Kelvin Bolden is just a superstar recruiter inside the state of Mississippi. And that whole staff had a whole day to make Caleb Cunningham Day essentially a thing inside that building. So this kid just got the red carpet rolled out for him, and he should. He's a top 25 player in the country. But that's probably what's happening here. There's a bump. And the fact that Ole Miss has put so many players in the league at his position, that can only help him, because Mississippi State, the last wide receiver that Mississippi State put in the league was like Eric Moulds. And
who?
Eric Moulds.
I don't know Eric Moulds.
Yeah, probably because you weren't born.
Okay. Well, look, that's fair enough.
Like about 1994 or somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah. So Ole Miss has that going for them, and I'm sure Ole Miss hammered that home repeatedly over and over again while he was on his visit. But he's going to go down to Alabama on Wednesday. Good grief. I mean, Ole Miss has put receivers all into the wide receiver league, but you don't want to get into a competition with Alabama wide receivers recently. Yeah. And then LSU is freaking wide receiver U. So that bump is going to wear off a little bit, and it's going to come into recruiting. Now, I talked to Brian Smith, and he seems to think it's an Ole Miss State battle. If it's an Ole Miss State battle, Ole Miss has the advantage because of that. But State, their NIL collective is not what it needs to be. It hasn't been, but it's getting better. And Jeff Lebby is going to work to make it better. And they're going to find individual donors that are willing to basically be the benefactor of a situation like this for NIL purposes. They are all in on Caleb Cunningham. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be an old school Mississippi recruiting match, I think.
Look, I feel like this happens like every year. There's one kid, they will not get away no matter what. It doesn't matter what the financial scenario is. It doesn't matter proximity. It doesn't matter anything. State will say there's one kid that we are going 100% in on, and we will get him. And they do. Most 99% of the time, I feel like they end up getting that one guy that they feel like they got a really good or decent chance with. And, I'm not super bullish on Ole Miss yet. Just proximity is a lot to overcome when Jeff Levy's at every basketball game.
It's going to be really, really hard. But some people are just made to go to Boca Raton Bowls and St. Petersburg Bowls as opposed to playing in real football games.
I love the enthusiasm already today.
Man, I did a show this today. Joey McGuire, the coach at Texas Tech, came out and said that the SEC doesn't need a stray because he beat Ole Miss in 2022 in a Texas Bowl. I mean, that was his logic. It was one of the worst takes I've ever heard. And I spent basically 10 minutes ragging on him because the next year Texas Tech went to the Independence Bowl in mid-December and played. And so obviously using that win over an Ole Miss team in the spring bowl as a springboard to the Independence Bowl, that obviously meant a lot to him. Anyway, it was one of the most clown shoes. Yeah, it was one of the most clown shoes takes I've ever heard.
Well, anyway, I hope the happiness is short-lived. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, we might as well go into it. The SEC and the Big Ten right now is playing hardball, and I don't know exactly what game they're being played. Now, Keith Carter, I will say this. He was on the podcast over the weekend, and he actually was real quick. It's like, hey, the SEC and Greg Sankey, it's about leading from the front. You want to not be told what the changes are. You want to control what the changes are. And I thought that was a telling quote from Keith Carter. And then today, there was a quote of him talking to Richard Cross, where Richard Cross asked him if he believed that the split was inevitable and it was coming. And Keith Carter said he did. And now he had some other stuff to back up, and we talk about that on tomorrow's show. But the fact of the matter is the SEC and the Big Ten's playing hardball right now. And what will that inevitable split look like?
Man, that's first off, super loaded question, but a great question. Look, at least we're going into it with the mindset of leading with a big stick, so to speak. It's, the SEC carries a lot of weight. It's going to be interesting how all this plays out. I mean, all these rumors about 14-team playoffs and stuff like that, and even seeing rumors about 16-team playoff in the future. Man, I don't think anybody for sure knows kind of what the future of college football is right now. I sure don't.
No, and it's just I don't listen. This is my conspiracy theory, and this is the same thing I told Barrett Slee when he was on the show a little while back. I think that this 14-team playoff stuff is about creating inventory for an additional TV partner. I think that ESPN is going to own everything, right? Because they're in their contract, they can own everything, but they're allowed to essentially sublease some stuff. And I think that them and Fox are going to eventually be the person broadcasting the college football playoff. But in order for them to do it and to make it worthwhile or something they would do, they needed whatever the extra 2 or 3 games was that was in a 14-team playoff as opposed to a 12-team playoff. That is my conspiracy theory. That is the hill I'm going to die on.
I like that. I have not heard that, but that totally makes sense. Did you come up with this on your own? Did you pick this out somewhere?
I did.
I like that a lot, Steven. That's some serious sleuthing, my man.
Yeah, and it helps that I spent years working in television. That helps. So that explains why my brain is wired that way and works that way. But this 14-team playoff, it's going to be set up like the SEC basketball tournament, the way it's going to be set up, to where there's going to be 2 teams getting double buys, and they're going to be SEC and Big Ten teams, and different teams are going to get buys in certain levels, and nobody's going to be able to pay attention to it. And that I'm not going to be a big fan of, because honestly, just put the thing at 16, do a regular 16-team bracket, and let's be done with it.
Well, what are your thoughts on the conference championships if those get potentially eliminated?
All for it, because now,
really, kind of surprised to hear that.
Yeah, with the situation right now, it's like having an AFC East championship game. I mean, that's the world we're living in right now.
So I think that, my perfect world is I love the SEC championship. I agree with the playoff. It essentially creates no value, right? Theoretically, there's a scenario where you could
miss the playoff.
Say that again.
You could miss the playoff by losing the SEC championship game.
Yeah, but you're really never going to, if you win the SEC championship, you're never going. What are you going to do? Not make the playoffs? So I don't know. I agree. There's not a ton of relevance in it, but I feel like that's such a moneymaker for TV and the SEC, and it's awesome to watch. And as a fan of college football, I want to watch more football. But I don't really know what's going to end up happening with the championship game. Kind of surprised to hear you're kind of on the take that you're okay with it going away.
Yeah, it's a situation right now, the way it sits at this moment. Let's say the SEC and the Big Ten gets 3 automatic qualifiers. The worst position that you can be in is to finish second in the SEC and lose that championship game, because you're going to get jumped in all likelihood by the number 3 team, and there's a chance that somebody else is going to go up over you as well.
Yep, I could see that. Gosh, I didn't look at it like that.
You go from being number 1 or number 2 in the seeds if you win that game to potentially missing the playoff if you lose it, and at best playing a road game in the first round.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's not necessarily true, right? If the Big Ten and everybody else keeps their conference playoff, right?
Yeah, but it would be their same problem as well. So you're looking at like 4 teams in all of them. Let's just say there's 4 teams in both of them. More times than not, I think the runner-up in the SEC championship game is going to end up either 3 or 4 in the college football playoff. I don't think they're going to miss the playoff because they're SEC. Now, if you lose a game, the Big 12 championship game, that's probably an elimination game. That's probably a first-round game. The ACC championship game, that's probably a first-round game. But SEC and Big Ten is probably the difference. Let's say you're 10-2 going into the championship game. You lose. Georgia goes on. All of a sudden, you're 10-3. You go from being securely in, hosting a home playoff game, if you would have finished 10-2, to going on the road to either Ohio State or Penn State or one of those teams that finished second or third in the Big Ten.
Man, that would be catastrophic if you enforce the championship and it's detrimental to the SEC. That's pretty wild. Hadn't looked at it through that lens, but that's why they don't pay me the big bucks. So, yeah. Crazy stuff. Look, I don't think anybody knows what's going on, but look, as long as we get the TV dollars, it doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to do like soccer. Okay. This is the one way they can do it. I think that the SEC is going to have to do this like soccer. If they get 3 automatic qualifiers, the first 2 needs to be for the championship game.
So 3 automatic qualifiers for the SEC championship game?
No, 3 automatic qualifiers for the SEC, but 2 of them have to go to the SEC championship.
Gotcha. I'm there. Yeah. So do you think if there was a 16-team playoff that encompasses an at-large that could potentially be 4 teams in the SEC?
I think there's going to be 4 teams in the SEC now. I think it's 16
with a 12-team playoff.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
man.
I see right off the bat before it ever starts. Okay, I think Georgia's in the playoff. I think Texas is in the playoff. I think Ole Miss is in the playoff. So that's 3. Now, think about, I have not said Alabama yet. I have not said LSU yet. If Missouri gets hot, because there's a chance Missouri could get hot too. And, there's going to be some pie in the sky schools, but those are probably the contenders going into the season. I think 4 teams out of the SEC next year, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Well, look, if that's the case, then I really feel as if let me rewind that. If there is a potential for 4 teams in a 12-team playoff bracket, then if we agree with that, then at 16 you've got to probably tack on 1 more, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it goes to 16 teams, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to have 4 automatic qualifiers apiece.
Golly, man, that would be. I love that selfishly, but I'm not looking through a student athlete or lens or anything like that. I'm just looking at it. I want Ole Miss to have the best chance possible to go to the college football playoff. Yeah.
So, you're getting ready to get out of here tomorrow. Spring practice actually begins at Ole Miss. I was told last week by a parent of one of the players that they weren't going to do it until after spring break. And then today it comes out, they dropped the Grove Bowl date and the practice starting tomorrow. I'm beginning to wonder if there were practices they were trying to get in ahead of time. And last year, because of the concert, I think they're having it again, by the way, like April 20th, another Morgan Wallen concert. I think those practices that they had after the Grove Bowl last year, they're going to have those 2 practices before spring break this year. They're going to be acclimation practices.
Interesting. What date was the Grove Bowl? I hadn't heard or seen anything on that.
April 13th, the Mississippi State
April 13th. I'll mark the calendar. I assume we don't have a time yet on it.
3:00.
3:00. Man, you're on top of things.
Uh-huh.
All right.
3:00, and they play Mississippi State at 7:30.
Say that again.
They play Mississippi State in baseball at 7:30.
Man, that is going to be a heck of a day.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun for everybody.
Well, cool, man. Well, look, I'm looking forward to all that. You always have the good scoop like that.
Man, that's what I'm here for, man. And Pratt, man, I do want to say thank you so much, man, because it's been a pleasure to talk to you all of this time. And you're going to take a little bit of a break from this show, which Kara McCutcheon, Hottie Toddy Strohs has done something similar. So this isn't goodbye forever, but this is till we see you again, man.
Well, look, I appreciate it. It's been about a year, probably a year and a half now, Steven. Yeah. So I've enjoyed the heck out of it and just got a lot going on right now. And like I said, it's been a great run, and hope to be circling back with you at a later date. Okay. Especially during this football season. I bet things get a lot more calmed down this football season. I hope so, man. Can't wait. All right, buddy. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Pratt Rogers, one more time, thank you, buddy, and we'll see you down the road. See you, my man. Thank you.